stars, I will be there.
I'm Monica Charette, and this is Holding the Light.
As long as you love, I will whisper in your ear. Little whispers you will hear. As long as you love.
It's hard to recognize the difference between your grief and what could be a mental health crisis, especially when you've lost a child and experienced the greatest sadness imaginable. Grieving the loss of her only son, Brady, Kirstie Martin knew the difference one day and sought help that saved her life. Listening to her experience could possibly save yours or someone you love. This is a difficult but important conversation. We are so humbled to share her brave story and celebrate the love and legacy of her son. Join us as Colby and I hold the light with Kirstie Martin. Kirstie, it's so good to see you in
Good
person.
to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you for being here, making the hour-long trip from St. Albans today to be with Colby and I. Kirstie and I, like most of our podcast guests, were brought together because of child loss, sadly. And that is how it all began. But our friendship really deepened when Kirstie created this amazing social media connection, a Facebook page called Maine Angel Moms, and asked me to help administer it. So tell our listeners about that, if you could, and how did you come up with the idea?
I came up with the idea because I did seek some online support groups a couple months, I would say, after losing my son. And they are really helpful. There's a lot of resources on there, but I found that most of them were national or international groups. One way that those pages help me is, as people always say in life, somebody always has it worse. And if you can imagine if someone having it worse than maybe I do, even though I lost my son, there are people out there that have a lot of unanswered questions, don't know that their child was murdered and, no justice, that kind of a thing. The moms on there were really helpful, but I really wanted to connect on a smaller level with, there's so many moms in the central Maine area alone, never mind the whole state, that, have more in common than being on an international stage. So I decided to create a group for not just central Maine moms, but all Maine moms, and wanted to make it specific to Maine moms. I guess you could do a New England one too. It'd probably be similar, but we already knew so many moms. I knew you and, a few others just within 50 miles of me that are going through the same thing. So I'm like, why are we struggling alone? Or, it's nice to have somebody close by to reach out to. And the whole state obviously is not, we live in a big geographical state, but we don't live in a highly populated state. But just decided to do it to have like a safe place for Maine moms to come and say what they want, be supported, offer support. And it's easy to relate to people that are from your own state.
I think that's true in many aspects. I think there's about 164 last time I looked on the site.
Yeah.
Members that follow it, so it's grown a lot.
Yeah, you don't really like to see the number grow, but...
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of the things they share on the site?
Thoughts about their children, especially during anniversaries. I never encourage anybody to say anything they don't want to. I do just say kind of sometimes welcome to a new member, list their name, and, just have them say hello, or maybe just what their child's name was. I know you're on it too, so you see that people really are supportive of each other. There's actually been no negativity at all. Everyone has been amazing. And, I've made some new connections through the page, and actually I found a mom that, as Deb said on hers, nothing happens by accident, right? Mm-hmm. A mom that lost her son and her husband on the same day in a car accident, and we kind of have been in each other's lives for a very long time because we actually figured out that our sons played hockey against each other 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, we're all connected.
Actually, the week after her son and husband died, we were supposed to play against them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember when it happened, hearing about it and thinking, oh my God, we're supposed to play them next week. That's, and how tragic it was and how upset I was about it. And, it's funny because her and I have connected since then. We have so much in common that it's almost disgusting. Yeah. Not even in regards to our kids, but her and I personally. But yeah, and actually her husband's birthday was the same day as Brady's too. But so many, we could just sit there and go through all the things that we have in common. So, it's nice to, connect with people. Obviously you connect with some people better than others, but it's nice to be able to connect with people and have a support group.
So it's a private group and we want to keep it that way.
Correct.
For give people a safe space, right?
Correct.
To share their photos and
that's
their feelings.
The number one priority, as far as I'm concerned, is making sure it's a safe space for moms to come.
So if we have a mom that's listening right now to the group, how would you suggest that they contact Maine Angel Moms?
If you're on Facebook, you just go to the Maine Angel, you type in Maine Angel Moms, and it's Maine, the word Maine, the state Maine. We only ask a couple of questions. Obviously, one is about privacy. We require that you do live in the state of Maine. Or I think we have one member on there that lived in Maine their whole life, including when they lost their child, but recently moved out of state. I think that it's appropriate for that mom to be on the page. And we also obviously want to make sure that you've lost a child. We don't like to just, there's a lot of people out there, scammers and people that, just some grandparents, I think, have tried to join the group. And unfortunately, it's not that they couldn't benefit from the page or offer benefits to the members, but it's really for moms.
How do you feel about men that want to join the group?
I wish men would have their own group. I've tried to encourage my husband to do that, but he's not having it. So, we could maybe eventually do a Maine, angel parents page, mm-hmm. But, men and women grieve differently. I find that women really I think women would feel safe, moms would feel safer if it were just moms, because dads just aren't there for, dads just handle it differently. Yeah. So they're not really even looking for an online support group.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. Your son, Brady, lost his life at the age of 22.
Yep.
It'll be 3 years this September. It's hard to imagine. He died so tragically in a logging accident, doing what he loved.
Yep, absolutely. He did.
It was his passion, but it came with risks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he knew that.
He definitely did.
Did you accept that?
As much as you accept your kids doing things that could be dangerous, I accepted it.
Yeah.
Because, it's if your kid's driving too fast, do you accept it? Not really. You don't like it, but it's what kids do sometimes. Or, but I did accept it. I loved that he was doing something that he was very passionate about, and he loved what he did.
Yeah.
So what more can you want for your child, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you find out about the accident?
Unfortunately, not the way, there's never a good way to find out about it, I guess. I found out about the accident. I had just gone to bed and my husband was working nights, so I was home alone. And I received a text message from his girlfriend, fiance, asking if I was still up. And I said, yeah, I just climbed in bed, but I'm still awake. And she texted me back and said, is Tom home too? And I said, no. And honest to goodness, at first, I'm like, oh my God, is she pregnant or something? Like they want us both home to tell us something. Because this is like 8:30, quarter of 9 at night. So my first thought was, literally went to that. I'm like, oh my God, they must want us together to tell us they're pregnant or something like that.
Well, never do you imagine that the news that you're coming is
coming.
So
she kind of went away for a few minutes, and then she said, I'm going to call you in a minute. And she called, and the first thing she said is, Brady's dead. And that was that. It was a very short call. I don't even really remember what I said to her. I do remember saying to her, "Where is Diesel?" who was his dog, who was working with him often. So I was obviously worried about him too, and hanging up. And then my world was upside down. State police ended up going to her first because he was working in Litchfield and they were living in Gardner, and she was blowing up his phone trying to find him. So they ended up going to her first, which is not how it's supposed to be. I'm not upset with them. It just is the way our journey was supposed to go, I guess. But could have saved me a little bit of trauma. It was a little traumatic being home alone. She told me the state police were en route to my house. And within a half an hour, they were at the door. So that's how I found out.
So from there, did you meet them at the hospital, or he did not go to the hospital?
He didn't go to the hospital, which is, it's some of the parts that are difficult, or were difficult. I'm better now, but were very difficult for me was, I was an ER nurse for a long time, so I have experience. And I get they have to make the scene safe. I get that there's certain criteria. I just didn't understand why. I wanted to make sure that someone actually, did you guys... Well, the first thing I wanted to know was he alone, right?
Right.
He worked alone so much. And I don't think I would have come this far if he had been alone. Because there would have been so many unanswered questions, especially was he injured and did he lay there? And he wasn't alone, so there were witnesses. One of the witnesses was the landowner, who is a Marine, so he is EMS trained. If I didn't have that reassurance, because he told me once I finally connected with him, it took me a while, but he told me that, he was right there and there was nothing, he was gone. So, that part's hard for me. I got most of my questions answered, and actually a month or two after, no, it wasn't a month, it was longer than that. It was probably 3 or 4 months. I did reach out to the detective because the state police officer that came to my house hadn't been on scene. So he really didn't have any answers, and I felt really bad for him because he looked Brady's age.
Yeah.
And he basically was, worked in the Skowhegan office for the state police, the Skowhegan, coverage area. And he basically just got a call saying, "Hey, we need you to go do a death notification to a mom." And I felt bad for him after the fact because I'm like, I would be so ticked off if I had to go to a mom's house. And also I live in the middle of the woods. There's no lights. It's really dark. I live 2 dirt roads off from any tarred road. And this poor kid's showing up, and here is a woman screaming inside the house. It's pitch black outside. There wasn't even an outside light on. I just felt so bad for him, but he was amazing. Totally amazing. But I did talk to the detective that was on scene. He reassured me that everything was done. One of the things I wanted to know was why he laid out there for so long, because they didn't remove him until 11:30 that night, and the accident happened at 6. And I really struggled with that.
What was the answer for that?
Initially, what I was hearing, in the first week, was that OSHA had to be called, and the scene wasn't safe. There was a lot of trees down. But again, in my ER mind, I'm like, no, well, OSHA wasn't called because it's a private business. It's not like a commercial. OSHA wasn't called, so that wasn't actually the case. Because my other thing was he laying out there alone?
Right.
It's but the detective said that there was a lot of trees down, so it was hard to get out to him. And he said that the medical examiner took a while to get there. But in my ER nursing brain, EMS brain, I'm like, they take, baskets up mountains and bring people down. You couldn't just lug him over. You know what I mean? I guess it's probably a mom thing. It's even when you think, it just kind of relates back to when they're babies. It's just why do you leave him? I don't understand. Was he alone out there by himself? That kind of a thing.
I don't think you're alone in that, because I remember calling even the the funeral caretaker
Mm-hmm.
and asked him to be so gentle with her. Please take care of her. And even though she wasn't with us,
Yep.
I think it's a mom thing. It's something to continue to care for your child.
I wish people could understand how much comfort it brings a mom. I can't speak for a dad, but Guy Lawrence works at Lowry Brothers Funeral Home. And initially, Brady was in Augusta at the medical examiner's office. And my brother-in-law said, do you want him home? I'm like, yes, obviously I want him up here. And my brother-in-law took charge. He was our angel during that time. He was the one, like you were talking to Stephanie about having that person. He was that person for us, and he was, I don't know how we could have gotten through that week without him, but they called me to reassure me that Guy Lawrence, who actually had known Brady since he was little, Brady had played football and hockey with his son. And Guy wanted to make sure that I knew that he had him and that he was going to take care of him himself. And people don't understand the comfort that brings. It's just crazy.
I know. That's interesting to hear you say that.
It is.
I felt the same way.
You know, and it's something you never think about in your whole life unless you go through something like this, like how much comfort that brings. And I mean, even me as a nurse, I've taken care of people post-mortem, and I've always been respectful and know that that's someone's mom or dad, or, you know, it's still a person.
Absolutely. So it was such a public event, very similar to Cassidy's accident. What was it like to go from a private person to a very recognizable public person after this accident?
Hard to go out in public.
Yeah.
When I did finally try to go back to work, or I went back to my office one day, and it was a couple months after, I felt like I had a neon sign over my head. It was just so uncomfortable. And I get it. Like, I don't blame anybody for it. I get it. They just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. You know, it was okay. I know that there was a post made on the, Lawrence football page. I know that the Channel 5 News did do a story on it. I was okay with it because I was pretty oblivious the first couple weeks. I kind of wish I had some of what I had the first week back because I was so much more numb.
It's so true.
It's just, I tell people that I'm like, it's better, believe it or not, when you can't feel anything because, it's crazy what your body does to protect you. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank God it does that.
Uh-huh.
So I'd like to dive into something a little more personal. So we all know that the stress of child loss can make you feel like you're kind of losing your mind, your memory, your sense of stability, the capacity really to do your normal everyday things in life. And we've all experienced that from time to time, and sometimes for longer periods of time than we would like. But sometimes the trauma of grief can also result in more serious mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress.
Yep.
And you sought help for your own
I did.
mental wellness. Tell us what happened and when did you know that you needed help?
So I actually had 2 times. The first time was less severe. The first time was at around the 6-month mark. And of course everyone always says you have other children, and I'm like, I'm aware. I'm totally aware. This has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with my husband. It's just the way I feel. And I was trying to be strong for my girls. And the other thing in the back of my mind, I'm like, if I were to harm myself, I'm taking this pain and handing it to my mom. Like, why would I do that to my mother? That was even weighed more to me than even leaving the girls.
Wow.
I woke up one morning, I think it was like February, and he passed away in September. And I had just been kind of hanging on to those strengths and getting through. And I woke up that morning and I went to the bathroom and I stood up and looked out the window. I live in the woods, and just literally said that they'd be okay without me. They'd be okay, That was the first time I reached out and got help. Help included, I went to see my primary care doctor, was started on antidepressant, and also followed by about 2 years of therapy with a social worker therapist. She discharged me about a year ago. So last spring, and I was doing pretty good with my grief. I mean, I feel like I was in a place where it wasn't really going to you only get to a point where it's never going to be gone. You know, I miss my son every day.
Right.
There's so many things I want to tell him. And I do tell him. I don't know if he hears me or not, but I do tell him. But, that part's never going to go away. They're not coming back. Like, they're always going to be gone. For a while, my coping mechanism was to try to tell myself, oh, he's just away on a, like he was going to join the military at one point. It'd be like if he was just gone away to the other side of the world but at some point you're like, okay, the joke's over. Like, give me him back now. Like, when is the joke over? People don't understand. It's like Groundhog Day every day when you wake up. It's like, true. The difference is, you get to a point where you don't dwell on it. You wake up, you open your eyes and realize, gee, he's not here, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get out of bed.
Right.
So my second bout, I went through last summer, and out of nowhere, no warning, no triggers, I woke up one night in August, or maybe the end of July, I can't remember. But I woke up. This was scary to me because at one point I'm like, am I like mentally ill? Like, what's going on with me? I woke up. My husband was laying in bed beside me. He doesn't work nights anymore. He stays home with me now. I was laying there thinking that I didn't want to be here anymore. I've had enough. And was thinking in my head of what medications I had in my possession and in my home, including my husband's medications that I could just get up and take. But then the being prepared side of me said, well, I'd really like to take out my living will first. Like, I just was thinking of things that kind of like housekeeping things that I would like to do before I leave. And then I'm thinking in my head, what is wrong with me? Like, because I was hyper focused on my plan. It wasn't even that I was depressed. I wasn't crying. It was something I could not, I've never had anything like it in my life, and I haven't had anything like it since, but I could not focus on this plan. So I got up in the morning, and started to get everything ready. And the only thing that kept me from doing it was I basically had a panic attack. That's why I'm still here. Because otherwise, and then I got so much crap afterward. They're like, oh, well, I heard people saying, well, you don't really have enough medications. I'm like, listen, I'm a nurse. Like, I know what would work, okay? I'm not an idiot. But like, I heard people say, well, you wouldn't want your husband to find you like that. And no, of course I wouldn't. But I wasn't in a place that I could think about things like that, So I called a friend and my daughter, said I needed somebody to come to me. And they came to me, and we spoke to a nursing friend of mine who's amazing. And she talked over speakerphone to my friend and my daughter, and they called crisis. And she said, I'm like, well, I'm not feeling that way now. I shouldn't have to go to the hospital now, right? Because I'm better now. I wasn't better. Even when I was in the ER for 5 days, I was still thinking of the fact that there was a screw on the wall that I could probably take out and cut myself with. And I'm just like, who is this person? This is not me.
That must have been really frightening for you and your family.
It was frightening. In fact, when the doctor from Acadia did a Zoom thing with me when I was in the ER, I was like, am I having a nervous breakdown? Like, what is going on? It was so scary, just so scary. So I reached out for help, and I'm doing much, much better. Have an amazing, amazing, amazing psychologist that I'm working with right now. We figured out that a lot of the problem was that I have a lot of childhood trauma that I've never dealt with. I've always been the strong person. Like, people don't believe me when I tell them initially, because they're like, you've always been so strong. You're like a go-getter. I've done a good job at tucking everything in hiding places in my brain, but it's just not all going back together. And I think that the trauma of my son dying just kind of exploded everything, and it's just not going back in place. So the doctor's working with me right now to help try to, the issues aren't going to just be put back in the box they were in before. They need to be dealt with before they're put away. So one of the big ones that was bothering me is actually dealt with completely at this point. So I actually was able to just get rid of one already.
It's work. Grief
it
is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's help out there for people, right? So what are some of the resources you might share with people?
Obviously there's Crisis, and everyone knows about the suicide hotline. There's a warm line that I use, and it's not Crisis, just for anyone wondering. It's not Crisis. It's a bank of people locally that have been through traumas or difficulties, depression. They're normal, everyday people. They're really just there to listen, and they're a neutral person, because I had a time, the first time I called them, I had the feeling of just anger. My husband was working and I was sitting on the couch, and this is not right after my son died. This was like a year and a half probably after he died. And I just felt so angry, and I'm like, oh, it just was making me tearful, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I'm like, I can't go to bed like this. But it's like, who do you call? Like, I mean, I have friends I could call that would listen, but, you don't want to dump your crap on everybody else. It's like, I don't want to do it to my daughters. I don't want to do it to my husband. So my therapist had told me about a warm line. It's WARM warm line. I hadn't called it, but I remembered she told me about it. So I called them. The number is 1-866-771-9276. And I have it saved to my phone, actually, under my contacts. And I've called it a couple times since. But they're basically someone who, you may not reach a person that has been through the same thing you have, but they are all people who have been through things, and they're really good at listening and not trying to give you advice. If they think you need more than what they can offer, they will connect you with the right people. But highly recommend it. I've actually had friends call me since, I've talked about it so much now that I have friends call me and say, hey, what was that number again? I got to give it to my friend, or, so I've given it out a lot.
So it sounds like the sudden nature of this, I mean, to me, it's absolutely terrifying, especially considering the fact that, to all accounts, you had made progress in approaching your depression with your psychiatrist. You had been discharged.
Yep.
Obviously, that the sudden nature of this brings up a lot of questions. When following such a traumatic event, is there anything that we should be doing to potentially protect ourselves? Like, I just wonder. I know so many individuals, especially young men, who take their lives so suddenly because of the presence of a gun in the home or more violent measures. And I just wonder, in these instances, like, is there something we should be asking? Is there, prolonged therapy we should be going through? Is there anything that you think could have prevented or aided you in receiving the care you needed more immediately?
Colby, that's a good question. And that's the part that makes it so scary. Of course, a lot of people commit suicide with no warning. And I could have been one of them that day, because I never thought, I couldn't get myself away from the thought of it and wanting to do it. And I worked in the emergency room, and I've taken care of people in crisis and that have been suicidal. And, you can never really understand it until you actually experience it. It is definitely one of those things. Like, I've always been empathetic with those people and taking good care of them. But, it's scary to me because, people always are calling and asking how I'm doing. So I have people checking in on me. There was conversation about removing some guns from my home and giving somebody else my medications and things like that. But honestly, the doctor said, if someone is truly suicidal and they want to die, they're going to find a way. So unless you're in a safe place, there's really, and that's why I went to a safe place. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I don't know anything off the top of my head that, because it was so unexpected and so, it's so scary. It's very surreal. I don't even know how to explain it to people, but I was completely fine when I went to bed. Had a great evening and woke up at 2 a.m. with the intent of suicide. And I've never had anything like that before, ever.
I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what that is like. I know that trauma obviously can bring about those sorts of instances, and especially repeated trauma. But
The brain
obviously
is
I'm
a
very glad that you...
yeah, the brain is a very strange realm. It really is. There's a lot to it. I mean, I also had a stroke the year after my son died, so I do have some brain damage from that too. So I don't know if, I also am now a painter, and I've never painted in my whole life.
And a really good painter, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I'm practicing. And it's just weird to me because I've never been creative or artistic in my entire life, and now I can paint. So,
Wow.
I don't know. It could be a part of my brain that's affected. Sometimes it's hormonal. I just hope it never happens again, because it just was so scary. Because I was like, am I hearing voices? Like, is this me saying I want to do these things? Or it was so scary.
And had you had panic attacks like that before, the one that had brought you to come to... Yeah.
I had never had panic attacks until I lost my son.
Yeah.
I have always struggled with a little anxiety, mild, because now I know what major anxiety is like. But I'd always struggled with a little bit of anxiety. I think most moms raising kids will struggle with a little bit of anxiety.
We talked about that.
But, after Brady died, definitely I did get a diagnosis of anxiety, depression, PTSD. It would have been traumatic no matter how I was notified, but being home alone when I was notified is probably part of the PTSD, I think. I had a good 20 minutes at least on the floor, before anyone got there. And when the state police officer got there, he wanted to take me to the hospital. But it came around. So, yeah. And then the following, it was a year in September in 2020. And then in November, I had a stroke and was in Boston. So your body and your mind and your heart go through a lot when you lose a child.
It changes you. It changes the person you were. And I guess I'd ask you, what do you miss about the old you?
I miss being a nurse sometimes. When I talk to my nursing friends, maybe not so much. But I was a really good nurse, but I know when I went back to work for the time until I had my stroke after Brady died, my heart was not in it anymore. I love patients. I love being a nurse. Always said I didn't want to be an OR nurse because I like people. Those ones are just sleeping. But when I went back after Brady, I was only working per diem, just a couple days a week, sometimes short shifts. And I had my first panic attack after Brady died was actually while I was working, taking care of a young man who had a motorcycle accident. And it just made me realize, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. This is not going to be for me anymore. And then, of course, I had my stroke. So, because there's always different kinds of nursing you can do, maybe that are less triggering. But then I had my stroke, and I'm definitely not returning to nursing. So I miss confidently going out in public. I know when I went out to an event to support somebody's husband who was dying, like a fundraiser, I walked in, and we live in small communities. So, people from Oakland and Fairfield and Winslow and Waterville. It's not just one community. And I walked in and I just felt like everyone was staring at me. I miss being able to just go and never, not thinking twice about people saying, oh, that's Brady Martin's mom. You know what I mean? And I just miss that part.
Relatable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I know it's still very early in your grief journey. I remember someone saying that to me in the first couple of years who was 20 years out. And I thought, I don't know how you live that long, right? But you really are pretty early in your journey.
I know. And I hear people say at 10 or 20 years, it's
hard to imagine.
I'm just like, don't say that because it's not going to encourage me.
No. But yet you've still learned so much.
I have.
In that short period of time.
Definitely. Yeah. I learned a lot about my husband and the difference between men and women. I know other people have touched on that, but it's such a real thing. The way moms and dads grieve differently. Mm-hmm. And it's okay the way they both do it. It's amazing how different it is.
Yeah, learning to respect each other's grief
and I know
journey.
that's a point that you kind of helped me on when I first met you, along with one of our other friends. Because you guys were similar. You've been married for a long time, and we were married young. We've been married 26 years. You know, and you guys kind of reassured me that kind of what I was feeling about, you know, why doesn't my husband understand? You know, you kind of reassured me that that was normal. And we are on the other side of that now, for sure.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
What has child loss taught you?
To live. I don't worry anymore about little things like I got pulled over 2 weeks ago.
Uh-oh, confessions.
You know, I don't even go anywhere. That's what's funny. And the one time I go out, you know, I went out and I got pulled over, and not for speeding or anything. And by the way, I didn't get a ticket. I only got a warning, and he was really nice. But I used to get like shaky and like so scared when I got pulled over. I wasn't even stressed at all. It's just like, you just don't. I've always been a don't sweat the small stuff person, but I even don't sweat some of the big stuff anymore, because I tell people, other than losing another child, I've already been through the worst thing I'm ever going to go through in my life. So I feel like the rest is all going to be a piece of cake. That's the way I would describe child loss and how I live with it.
Yeah. I've often said I wouldn't give up the 17 years that I had with Cass to spare one moment of the pain that I have experienced.
No, absolutely not, because that pain is love. I've said that too. I said, you know, it was only 22 years. He packed a lot in it, and I feel like I'm glad that wherever he is now, I'm glad that I got to be his mom, chosen to be his mom for that 22 years. I'm very, very blessed and thankful for that.
And I know newly bereaved parents will appreciate hearing that.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even think that far ahead, but you do get to a place where you understand that the only emotion greater than pain is love.
Love. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you've turned your grief into action in many ways to honor Brady. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, he has a memorial fund that we've established. We're not doing a ton with it at this time, other than letting it build up. My brother-in-law is actually kind of in charge of it, and he's kind of wanting to let it build up to a point where we can do something big for the whole future. He doesn't want me, you know, I want to go out and do a bunch of little things that I'm someone who's like, see someone who needs something, I'll be like, I'm going to go get it. Cause that's something Brady would have done. But he's like, let's get it really positive first. And then he's like, I want to do something so that every year forever.
Something in perpetuity.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I am so thankful for him to point that out to me. But yeah, we, the things we do on our own, my husband and I and our family, so after Brady died, we had someone reach out to us. They were looking for firewood, and they didn't know Brady passed away. And she explained to me that the winter before, her husband had been diagnosed with an epilepsy disorder, and that he was out of work, and that they were looking for firewood, and Brady was trying to give him a deal, and he just went and brought him 2 cords of firewood for free. And he told them, you know, if you get low or whatever, let me know, and I'll come back.
Wow.
With more. They did have small kids too. So she reached out to me by accident looking for firewood. And so that inspired us to say, okay, let's donate a couple cords of firewood every year, you know. And we reach out and find people who really need it. We really want to make sure the people that need it the most are getting it. And I think we initially said we'd do 2 cord, and we've done up to 5 in some falls.
No.
So, and we do it ourselves. My husband and I are out there. He's cutting. I'm out there with a wood splitter, and we're
something so gratifying about
it.
It is,
though,
right?
But you know, the thing is, though, is I get to go to that person's house, unload their firewood. They're very grateful, very happy to see us, and I get to say, "Oh, by the way, this is my son Brady."
Yeah.
Show him a picture of him and say, "This is why we do this."
Yeah.
And it's just another way to remember him. Some of our best friends that are like nieces, aunts and uncles to my kids, they have started their own little tradition for Brady. They go every year the week of his birthday to Walmart or Hannaford or Shaw's or wherever, and they try to find a kid that has someone ordered a cake for their kid for their birthday, and they pay for it and write a little card.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they don't know any information about the they can't give them information about the kid, but the parent goes to pick it up and it's already paid for.
I love that.
So that's another one.
I think it's great when people find ways to connect with their child that is gone.
Ironically, this year will be the third birthday since he's been gone, and actually the first two, and this is social media and probably one of the good things about it, the first two cakes that they bought, they actually found through just knowing a lot of people, the people who got them.
Oh.
So the first time they did it, the little girl, when they sang happy birthday and stuff, and she had Brady's picture in her hand.
Oh my God.
And they shared with us a video of them singing happy birthday to her. It was so adorable.
That's so meaningful too.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's really cute.
Yeah.
Just another way to, remember him on a day that is actually become our hardest day. For me, it is anyway. But
his birthday.
Yep. Yep. Christmas hasn't been bad. I mean, holidays are holidays. I mean, holidays can be depressing even if you haven't lost a child, but
that's a true statement.
Yeah.
So, birthdays for me, that's a day as a mom, especially when your kids are older or adults, that I know maybe not all moms do cakes for their adult children, but we do.
We do.
So it's always that day that I'm waiting for him to come to my house to eat cake and open his gifts, right? Even if he's working, he's still going to stop in and have cake. It's hard. On his birthday, I feel unsettled. I feel like there's still something to do that day, because he didn't come by.
Well, let's not forget you gave birth to him. So that is really, that's like the umbilical cord is still there sometimes. It's hard. I understand that.
Yeah, his birthday is shaping up for me at this point to be the toughest day.
What can people do to support you on that day?
The first year that we had a birthday without him, we had a huge shindig at our place where we had people coming and going all day long. I printed off some pictures of Brady and framed them and basically collected a bunch of donations, like gifts and stuff. Had people bring a donation of either a donation for the Humane Society or for the Christmas drive. Mm-hmm. And anyone who did that, I would give a raffle ticket, and we raffled off the prizes.
Oh, nice idea.
And we need to do that again. I think we need to start doing something like that again every year on his birthday, and that would help me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, people just need to find what it is that helps them get through that day. So our listeners always await our last question of the podcast. And I'm sure if you've listened, you know what that is, Kirstie, but we want to tell us how you want us to remember your son, Brady.
Funny. Really funny, actually. Beyond kind. Huge heart. And one of the hardest workers I have or ever will meet. I've always said he was born in the wrong generation. He loved to work outside. He loved hard work. And it's not really common these days to find someone who worked as much as he did. The stories we heard after he died from people in other states, even loggers in other states had met him, talking about what a amazing, friendly, outgoing, helpful, hardworking kid he was. It's like, how can you be any more proud of that? I mean,
Yeah.
Was he a pain in the butt a lot? Yeah. But when you hear those stories, it's like, we all say that. We're like, oh, our kids are so bad, but we have great kids. We really do. I mean, I just want them to remember that he died doing what he loved. And he was just an amazing soul.
I wish I had had the opportunity to know him.
He never wanted anyone to be upset, ever. If he ever saw anyone crying or like if I was upset, he'd come up and like just hug me, and He hated to see people upset, but I think that's where his humor came from.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal story. I know it's difficult.
Thank you for letting me tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're really brave coming on here and telling your story. And I also think, making the main Angel Moms group is during, your time with grief. That was another brave and really impactful decision. And I want to personally thank you because I'm not sure if, anyone tangential to a mother has come up and thanked you, but I've spent the last few years always hearing my mom lovingly refer to the group as her moms or my moms, and I've heard of other connections that she's made through it. And not only is it a shining example of how to use social media as a powerful tool to heal and to connect, but it also has provided me a lot of comfort knowing that my mother has an outlet and an opportunity to reach other mothers.
We are all each other's angels. We really are. I mean, when one of us is weak, the other one's strong. We have an amazing little group. We really do.
Well, thank you.
As long as you love.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast helpful, please share our link with others and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. I'm Monica Charette, reminding you that you are never alone in your grief. Until next time, we'll be right here with you, holding the light.
As long as you love.